Hi everybody, Tony again with Shinsho Yoga, and today I'm going to start a little series on yoga mats. If you're brand new to yoga, you might be like, why do you need a whole series on mats? If you've been in a yoga a little while and you've started to try to find a different mat because the one you have, you're like, maybe this doesn't work well, you'll understand why. Mats technology is complicated. I mean, it sounds silly, but it is. Yoga is very popular in this day and age, and there's a lot of companies that try to capitalize on that for the good and for the bad. Some offer really great products, some don't. Some offer things that are just, trendy. So I'm going to try to help you sort through some of that from my own experience. So I'm going to do a couple different videos, and this first one here is just going to be, how do you choose a mat? What do you look for? I mean, the first time you go to buy a mat, you might see different ones. You're like, well, how do I know which one to buy? So, we'll start with basics on that. Length, width, thickness. Okay, this mat is my current mat that I use with me when I teach and I go to classes. It's the same exact style as this mat. This one started to wear out a bit, so I had to replace it. This is what's called a Jade Elite S, and I'll get in another video about reviews of different styles of mats, so don't worry about that for right now. But the first thing you'll want to look at with mats, okay, is it the right size for you? Mats are generally going to range lengthwise, okay, so length you're looking at from here to here, right? Anywhere from 5 3/4 feet to about 6 feet. So generally you'll see 68 to 71 or 72 inches when you go to buy a mat if you go to buy one online. If you're just buying one at your local sporting goods store, it may not list anything like that on there. But if you go to buy one online, you're generally going to see 68 to 72 inches in general. How tall are you? That's really what it comes down to. If you're a taller person, the longer mat will be the better choice. If you're a shorter person, the shorter mat is generally a better choice. You won't need as much. One of the considerations you have to think about is that if you are going to a studio, depending on the studio you go to, look, yoga can be crammed into all different places. Where I teach in the yoga loft in Freehold is in the attic of a farmhouse. So we have canted ceilings and things which can make space tight. Where I trained and where I learned from my teacher, those classes would get packed. So you've got 36-foot mats in a place, every inch matters. So getting as much as you need. The length, whether you need 68 or 72 really depends on how tall you are. I'm 6'2", so I generally go with a longer mat if I can get it. Sometimes they can be quite a deal more expensive to add a couple inches. So if it's costing me $20 more to get a 72 versus a 69 inch, I won't worry about it, But if you can afford a little bit more, if you're taller, get the longer mat. That'll just make it easier for you when you're in the practice, that you won't hang off one end or your feet are sticking off, or that when you go to lay down, your head's on the floor or your feet are hanging off. So length all depends on your height. Width of the mat, right? So mats are generally going to range between 24 to 26 inches. Again, depends on your size. If you are a wider person, you might want broad shoulders. A wider mat is better. If you're a smaller person, you don't need all that mat. And again, depending on the studio that you go to, how much room they have. If it's a packed studio, a little bit smaller of a mat is going to make it a lot easier. Otherwise, you're going to be overlapping on the person next to you. So, size-wise, height, width, depends on your body. And of course, the more material there is, the larger the mat, right? So the more that you're rolling up and the heavier it becomes. So the things that it can fit to and where you put it when you put it away, the less mat there is, the more easier it's going to fit into maybe your gym bag if that's what you have, or if you have a dedicated yoga mat, which I would recommend, which I will go over different ways to store on another video. But the smaller ones are maybe a little bit easier to fit in. But again, it's about comfort. You need a mat that's going to fit you. So if you are a larger person, whether it is broad-shouldered or maybe you're just getting into the practice and maybe you're not as in the physical shape you want to be in, and that's okay. That's why you come to do these things. You're more than welcome to come to classes. Right? You may need a larger mat. So height and width depends on your body. The other thing you're going to think about is thickness. Most mats are going to generally run around 4 to 5 millimeters. Right? Some more, some can run up to 6 to 7 meters. I have a Manduka mat that's about 7 millimeters, 6, 7 millimeters, very thick mat. What this offers you is more cushioning into the floor. So when you are on your hands and your knees, and I often talk about taking a blanket and putting it under the knees, those types of mats are going to absorb a lot of that cushioning. So if you don't have a blanket or you generally just don't want to use one, or maybe the studio you go to, maybe you take yoga at a gym somewhere and they don't have props, those thicker mats are going to be very helpful in those scenarios. And when you come to lay down in the end, anything you're doing on your back, you're not going to feel the floor as much. The other side of that is the thicker the mat, the more challenging the standing pose. So a thinner mat is going to give you more of a feel of the floor. Most yoga studios are going to have a hard floor, right? So that thinner mat is going to really translate that into your feet or your hands, especially the feet, and you will feel more stable on a thinner mat. A thicker mat is going to have more cushioning, so it's going to be a little bit more wobbly. And when you come to do standing poses like tree or half moon or warrior three or dancers or any of these types of things, your ankle is going to... When I was using my thicker Manduka mat, and I still will do it, I come off my mat and I stand on the wood to give myself a nice solid base. This isn't wood, but pretend it is. To have myself a nice solid base in what I do. So thickness depends on what you're looking for. Some mats may not offer a thicker one. Some companies do, some companies don't. That thickness of the mat also is going to depend on the materials. You know, a more inexpensive mat, this is a very expensive mat, so this is a very dense material on here. Right? So it may be only 4 millimeters thick, but it's actually quite a good amount of padding. A cheaper mat is going to be more just kind of air pockets in between instead of material. And that is not going to offer you as much stability, stability, but cushioning when you're on it. And it's definitely not going to offer a whole lot of stability. It's just kind of give way under your feet when you go. So thickness depends on what you're looking to get out of it, where you want more cushioning or more stability. Right? And again, the more expensive in general, the mat, the higher end, listen, change that, not expensive. The higher end, the higher quality, the denser that thickness of that material will be. So even a smaller or a less thick mat, a less dense mat, a 4 millimeter versus a 6 or a 7, generally will offer some more cushioning than a cheaper mat or a less well-built mat. The other thing, and most important in my opinion, is the traction, the stickiness of the mat. I bought this mat, this jade mat, because it's claimed to be the stickiest one out there. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I can't say it's bad. I have the basic Jade Harmony mat, and that one I think was just as sticky, but it's pretty good. You need the stickiness to be able to hold you in downward facing dog and any type, especially down dog, but any type of wide leg poses or anything. You need the traction. This has to be tacky, right? It's not where you're like a movie theater floor, but it's gotta, I'm pressing my hand there. And if you're a sweater like I am, like I sweat when I'm doing this, I'm going through a flow, you need a mat that's going to hold up when it gets wet with sweat, because it doesn't matter how much you wipe it off, it's still going to be damp. So you need something that's going to hold up so you're not skating out in your postures. So finding a mat with a good stickiness, in my opinion, is the most important. The thickness, the length, The width, you can, if you find a really good sticky mat that's maybe not exactly right length, you can make do with it. But if you find a perfect length and perfect width, but you skate across that mat, no, it's not worth it. So, length, width, depending on your body size. Thickness depends on what you're looking for in the way of either you want the floor feel, the support, or the cushioning. But what is the tackiness of the mat? More expensive mats generally have a better sticky surface than less expensive mats. Less expensive mats usually can be very skatey. But there are some less expensive mats that aren't too bad at all. And I'm going to do some mat reviews in some future videos. So, thickness, length, width, tackiness. And then, of course, what can you afford? So, little basics on how to choose a mat. Next video is going to be a little bit reviewing of different types of mats. So, as always, thanks for watching. Any questions or comments, please let me know. Feel free to leave them below. Namaste.